Mark Penn is a former Bill Clinton advisor, also pollster and CEO of Stagwell. So let's put this New York Times Siena poll of 6 battleground states up on the screen here. Trump currently leading in 5 of the 6. The only state that Biden's leading in is Wisconsin. If those numbers held, Mark, a year from now, Donald Trump could very well become the 47th president. How much panic is this setting off in the Biden campaign and more broadly in the Democratic Party?
Well, I don't think that numbers like this should set off panic. What it should set off is reconsideration of the policies, changes you have to make. And look, I worked with President Clinton, and his ratings when I started were worse than this. Nobody thought George Bush was going to get reelected, and Barack Obama's reelection was in question. These are not good numbers. Inflation, crime, immigration, these are big issues that the president has not solved. Most people think the country and the economy are in the wrong direction. He has 1 year from now to change those numbers. If he doesn't, it's going to be a really tough reelection.
But even prominent Democrats like David Axelrod, who was Obama's senior advisor and may or may not reflect Obama's thinking, tweeted about those polls, saying of Joe Biden, quote, "Only Joe Biden can make this decision. If he continues to run, he will be the nominee of the Democratic Party. What he needs to decide is whether that is wise, whether it's in his best interest or the country's." Whose best interest do you think it's in?
I don't know what's going on between the Obama and the Biden camps here. Obama separated himself somewhat from the president's Israel policy. Very unusual that a former president of the same party ever does something like that. And then a day or two later, Axelrod says maybe he shouldn't run. It seems to me that there's a little internal friction here, as evidenced by this. And I don't think it's really affecting the decisions that the White House is making.
So the big question is, if Biden were to decide not to run, as Lyndon Johnson did in March of 1968, who would step in? A lot of people think it could be Kamala Harris. A lot of people think it could be Gavin Newsom. Ted Cruz has got a different idea. Listen to what he thinks.
In the Democrat Party, they can't push Kamala Harris aside and replace her with a white guy. I predicted that there was a very real chance the Democrats would jettison Joe Biden and parachute in Michelle Obama, and that they do it at the convention next summer. I think the chances of that are rising every day.
Seems like a long shot, but what do you think?
Well, I think first, the party is not jettisoning Joe Biden. It is solidly behind Biden, even though there are obviously numbers and situations that the president's got to deal with. But I do think, well, what would open up here? You've got the governor of California, Illinois, Michigan. You have a number of governors, I think, who've been in waiting in case this spot would open up. And maybe Michelle Obama as well, given this friction between the Obama camp and the Biden camp. All those are possibilities. But for now, Joe Biden is the nominee if he wants it.
It is nothing if not intriguing. Mark Penn, always great to get your take on things. Appreciate it.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.